Deep within the rural stretches of Saint Clair County in the state of Michigan lies a narrow, unpaved stretch known as Morrow Road. This desolate path winds through dense woodlands and forgotten farmlands shrouded in chilling whispers. Locals avoid this isolated route after dusk because the woods conceal a tragic tale of unspeakable loss and eternal wandering. The chilling legend of Morrow Road traces its origins to the severe winter storms of the late 1800s. During this unforgiving era, survival in the secluded Michigan wilderness demanded immense resilience. A young pioneer mother lived in a modest wooden cabin near the winding road, raising her newborn infant alone, while her husband sought work far away. Life on the desolate frontier proved incredibly harsh for the solitary mother. She spent her days tending to the fragile infant while bracing against the biting winds that rattled their fragile shelter. The thick forest surrounding their small clearing felt oppressive and watchful, as though unseen eyes studied their every movement from the dark tree line. One terrible night, an unusually fierce blizzard descended upon the quiet Michigan countryside. Blinding white snow buried the familiar landscape under freezing drifts, while roaring winds tore through the valley. The terrified mother huddled near the stone hearth, clutching her crying baby tightly, as the wooden walls groaned under the immense pressure of the freezing tempest. Amidst the roaring storm, a sudden violent crash echoed from the back room of their wooden cabin. Startled by the deafening sound, the mother placed her bundled child in the heavy wooden crib. She grabbed a small iron lantern and stepped cautiously into the dark hallway to investigate the alarming disturbance threatening their fragile sanctuary. The heavy wooden door had blown completely off its iron hinges, allowing the freezing blizzard to pour inside. Frantic and shivering, she struggled against the powerful gale to barricade the open doorway with heavy wooden furniture. The grueling task took several desperate minutes, but she finally managed to secure the room against the relentless winter storm. Exhausted and trembling from the bitter cold, the young mother rushed back to the main room to comfort her sleeping child. Her heart completely shattered when she looked inside the small wooden crib. The thick wool blankets were completely empty, and the heavy front door stood wide open, swinging violently in the howling, freezing wind. Pure panic consumed her entirely as she realized her precious infant was missing from the warm cabin. She screamed her child's name into the roaring darkness, but the deafening blizzard swallowed her desperate cries. Ignoring the freezing temperatures, she ran outside into the deep snow, wearing only her thin cotton nightgown and worn leather boots. The frantic mother plunged into the frozen woods, bordering the dark, unpaved path now known as Morrow Road. She tore through sharp, thorny bushes and deep snowdrifts, searching desperately for any sign of her stolen infant. Blood stained her pale hands as she frantically dug through mounds of snow, screaming until her throat bled raw. Local historical records remain vague about who or what took the child during that terrible blizzard. Some whispers suggest a starving wild animal dragged the baby into the dense forest. Others believe a darker supernatural entity lured the infant away into the freezing shadows, while the distracted mother struggled to secure the broken wooden door. The grieving mother never stopped searching the frozen woods during that endless night. When the brutal storm finally broke the following morning, neighboring farmers discovered her lifeless body frozen solid near the edge of the unpaved road. Her hands were still reaching outward toward the dense trees, locked in a permanent state of maternal agony. The tragic discovery of the frozen mother shook the small rural community to its core. Local men formed large search parties to comb the dense Michigan woodlands for the missing infant. They searched the surrounding fields and frozen creeks for several weeks, but they never found a single trace of the lost baby in the wilderness. The heartbroken community buried the young mother in a small, unmarked grave near the edge of the dense forest. They hoped her tortured soul would finally find eternal peace in the afterlife. However, the tragic events of that freezing winter night permanently stained the surrounding woodlands with a dark, lingering energy that refused to fade away. Shortly after the somber burial, strange occurrences began plaguing the farmers traveling along Morrow Road after dusk. Horses would suddenly panic and refuse to walk past the dark section of the woods where the frozen mother was discovered. Cold patches of air lingered over the dirt path, even during the sweltering heat of the summer months. Decades passed, and the dirt path eventually became a destination for brave teenagers seeking supernatural thrills in the dark. The local legend claimed that parking a vehicle on the desolate bridge crossing the creek at midnight would summon the restless spirit. Daring visitors would honk their horns 3 times to mock the grieving mother in the shadows. The foolish ritual supposedly mimics the sound of a crying infant echoing through the silent forest. Those who dare to perform this reckless act claim the surrounding woods suddenly grow unnervingly quiet. The chorus of nocturnal insects completely stops, and an overwhelming sense of deep sorrow washes over anyone sitting inside the parked metal vehicle. Many thrill seekers report seeing a glowing green orb floating silently between the thick tree trunks. The spectral light dances through the branches before slowly manifesting into the distinct shape of a young woman. She wears a tattered white nightgown stained with dirt and frozen blood, completely matching the horrifying descriptions from the original tragic winter. The sorrowful apparition wanders aimlessly along the dusty shoulders of Morrow Road with a horrifyingly frantic energy. She bends down to inspect the tall grass and peers behind large oak trees constantly searching for her missing child. Witnesses claim she ignores their presence entirely, as long as they remain perfectly silent inside their dark parked vehicles. However, making loud noises or trying to speak to the wandering spirit triggers a terrifying supernatural confrontation. The sorrowful ghost suddenly stops her frantic searching and slowly turns her pale face toward the disturbing sound. Her empty, dark eyes lock onto the trespassers, burning with an intense, supernatural rage, fueled by decades of endless maternal grief. In the 1950s, a group of local teenagers parked their large automobile near the old wooden bridge on Morrow Road. They honked the heavy horn repeatedly and laughed loudly into the quiet night. Their arrogant laughter quickly turned to pure terror when a thick, unnatural fog rapidly enveloped their vehicle, trapping them in the dark. The terrified teenagers watched helplessly as bloody handprints began appearing on the outside of their glass windows. The heavy metal doors rattled violently, as if an invisible force was desperately trying to rip them open. A woman screaming in absolute agony echoed from all directions, completely overwhelming the frightened youths huddled inside the locked metal cabin. One brave teenager sitting in the driver's seat finally managed to start the stalled engine. He slammed his foot on the gas pedal, tearing away from the haunted bridge at a dangerous speed. As they sped down the bumpy dirt road, they looked back and saw the glowing white figure chasing them through the swirling dust. The enraged spirit reportedly kept pace with the speeding vehicle, hovering just inches above the unpaved dirt road. Her pale mouth was stretched open in a silent, unnatural scream, while her elongated fingers clawed at the rear window. The terrified driver finally crossed the township lines, and the vengeful ghost instantly vanished into the dark woods. Similar terrifying encounters continued occurring throughout the 1970s and 80s as the legend of Morrow Road spread across the state of Michigan. Police officers frequently patrolled the desolate stretch to deter reckless teenagers from trespassing on the private farmlands. However, even the hardened local authorities admitted to experiencing unexplainable phenomena during their midnight rural patrols. One veteran police officer reported finding a distressed woman walking barefoot along the side of the dirt road during a freezing autumn rainstorm. He pulled his patrol vehicle over and rolled down his window to offer her assistance. When he asked for her name, the pale woman simply stared at him with hollow, empty black eyes. The brave officer stepped out of his warm vehicle, holding his bright flashlight to examine the shivering woman. As the beam of light struck her pale face, he realized she had no physical substance. The intense light passed directly through her transparent body, illuminating the dense, wet trees standing directly behind her in the dark woods. Before the shocked officer could react, the spectral woman lunged toward him with blinding speed. She passed directly through his chest, leaving a patch of freezing ice on his heavy wool uniform. The terrified lawman stumbled backward against his vehicle, gasping for breath, as an overwhelming feeling of profound sadness briefly stopped his racing, beating heart. The spectral woman evaporated into the falling rain, leaving the trembling officer completely alone on the dark, isolated road. He immediately requested a transfer to a different patrol zone, refusing to ever drive down Morrow Road after the sun went down. His chilling supernatural encounter convinced many skeptical locals that the tragic legend was entirely real. Paranormal investigators eventually flocked to Saint Clair County, armed with audio recorders and electromagnetic meters. They spent countless nights wandering the dark edges of the notorious unpaved road, hoping to capture definitive proof of the grieving mother. Many of these brave researchers captured chilling audio files featuring the distinct sounds of a woman weeping in despair. One dedicated investigation team ventured deep into the woods near the original location of the pioneer cabin. They set up sensitive audio equipment near the ancient stone foundation that remained hidden beneath thick moss and dead leaves. Around midnight, their meters detected a massive spike in invisible energy moving rapidly toward their dark, isolated campsite. The lead investigator called out into the dark forest, asking if the unseen presence was looking for her lost baby. A terrifying blast of freezing air immediately rushed through the clearing, extinguishing their bright lanterns. A disembodied voice whispered directly into the researcher's ear, demanding the return of her stolen infant in a raspy, desperate tone. Panic ensued as the team blindly scrambled through the pitch-black woods, desperately trying to find their parked vehicles. Invisible hands shoved them against the rough tree trunks, while branches seemingly reached out to trip their frantic footsteps. They barely escaped the haunted woods, leaving all their expensive recording equipment behind in the dark, terrifying forest. When the researchers returned the following morning in broad daylight, they found their heavy equipment completely destroyed. Deep scratch marks covered the metal casings, and the thick internal wires were ripped apart by immense physical force. The violent destruction proved that the sorrowful entity possessed enough physical strength to cause serious harm to unwanted living intruders. Local historians believe the endless search of the grieving mother is fueled by her inability to accept the finality of death. Her powerful maternal instinct trapped her soul in a continuous loop of pure agony and desperate seeking. She wanders the desolate stretch of Morrow Road, completely oblivious to the passage of time or changing generations. Some sympathetic locals leave small toys and baby blankets near the old wooden bridge, hoping provide comfort to the tortured spirit. They believe offering these gentle gifts might finally convince the crying woman that her child is safe in the afterlife. Unfortunately, the simple offerings always mysteriously disappear into the woods by the next morning. Despite these kind gestures, the terrifying encounters along the unpaved road have never truly ceased. Modern vehicles driving down the secluded path frequently experience sudden electrical failures and dead batteries near the notorious bridge. Drivers are forced to sit in absolute darkness, listening to the eerie silence of the woods while waiting for their engines to restart. During these terrifying mechanical failures, many trapped drivers notice a sudden drop in temperature inside their sealed vehicles. Frost rapidly forms on the inside of the glass windows, obscuring their view of the dark surrounding forest. The unmistakable sound of bare feet crunching against the gravel slowly approaches their stalled car from the pitch-black shadows. A pale face suddenly presses against the frosted glass, peering inside the dark cabin with wide, desperate eyes. The terrified drivers sit completely frozen in fear as the spectral mother inspects the interior of their vehicle for her missing infant. If she finds no baby inside, she screams in frustration and vanishes into the cold night. The legend specifically warns pregnant women and mothers with young children to avoid traveling down Morrow Road entirely. The jealous spirit is known to become incredibly aggressive when she senses the presence of a living child. Several terrified mothers have reported seeing the ghost desperately trying to open their rear car doors while driving at night. One harrowing account involves a young family driving home from a holiday gathering late in the evening. As they crossed the old bridge, their infant daughter began crying loudly from the back seat. Suddenly, a heavy physical force slammed onto the roof of their moving vehicle, causing the thick metal to dent inward above the child. The terrified father accelerated down the unpaved path, while the mother turned around to check on their crying baby. She watched in absolute horror as a pair of pale, ghostly hands phased right through the solid roof. The spectral fingers reached down toward the screaming infant, desperately trying to pull the child up into the darkness. The brave mother lunged across the seat and shielded her baby with her own physical body. The ghostly hands violently clawed at the mother's back, tearing through her heavy winter coat and leaving deep, freezing scratches on her skin. The father swerved onto the main, paved highway, and the terrifying phantom instantly abandoned her violent, supernatural assault. The family drove straight to the local hospital to treat the deep, freezing wounds on the mother's back. The medical staff were completely baffled by the severe frostbite patterns surrounding the deep physical scratches. The family never drove down the dirt road again, warning everyone they knew about the violent entity guarding the dark, unpaved path. The dark history of Morrow Road serves as a chilling reminder of the raw power of unending grief. The desolate stretch of unpaved dirt remains a terrifying boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the damned. The grieving mother refuses to abandon her post, choosing eternal torment over accepting her tragic loss. Today, the dense woods bordering the road look just as wild and forbidding as they did a century ago. Tall oak branches interlock above the dirt path, creating a dark, natural tunnel that blocks out the bright moonlight. The oppressive atmosphere makes even the bravest skeptics feel incredibly uneasy when driving through the desolate rural stretch. Urban developers have repeatedly tried to pave the notorious dirt road to connect the expanding rural neighborhoods. Every construction attempt has been plagued by bizarre accidents, missing heavy machinery, and terrified workers refusing to return to the site. The unpaved dirt remains stubbornly untouched, preserving the haunted legacy of the dark Michigan woods for future generations. Visitors who walk the desolate path during the day report feeling an invisible heaviness pressing against their chests. The thick air smells faintly of blooming wildflowers, mixed with the metallic scent of fresh blood. The surrounding wildlife completely avoids the area, leaving the dark woods trapped in a highly unnatural and deeply disturbing dead silence. The tragic tale of the frozen mother has transcended simple local folklore to become a permanent fixture of dark regional history. Her horrifying story continues to be passed down through hushed whispers in rural taverns and quiet high school hallways. She remains the undisputed queen of sorrow, reigning over the dark shadows of Saint Clair County. Those who dismiss the legend as a mere campfire story often find themselves humbled by the terrifying reality of the dark, unpaved road. The supernatural energy lingering near the old bridge is undeniably potent and fiercely hostile toward arrogant trespassers. True believers know better than to provoke the eternal wrath of a grieving mother in the dark. If you ever find yourself driving through rural Michigan after midnight, carefully check your directions for the name Morrow Road. If your path takes you near that desolate dirt stretch, turn around immediately and find an alternate route. The few extra miles of driving are a small price to pay to avoid the weeping terror waiting there. The woods are vast and deep, hiding secrets that were never meant to be discovered by the living. The weeping woman still wanders those dark trails, wearing her frozen, bloody nightgown, while endlessly searching the tall grass. She will never find peace, and she will violently punish anyone who dares to interrupt her eternal, sorrowful vigil. So remember the chilling tale of the lost child the next time you hear the wind howling outside your window. That mournful sound might not be the winter storm rattling the glass, but the desperate screams of a broken spirit. The mother of Morrow Road is still out there waiting in the dark, freezing woods forever.